comparison between the traditional agile project management. A lot of people ask me or approach me during training, ask me whether when to use agile and when to use traditional. A lot of people are confused about this. So especially those two different methodologies are very different from each other. So this webinar tried to address this topic. So what are the differences, to highlight the differences between both of them. And also it will highlight the differences between and recommendation when to use agile versus when to use traditional. I also ran through my quick background, which is I just want to do it quickly. I have a bachelor and master's degree in mechanical engineering, and also I have an MBA from Wayne State University in Michigan. I am certified PMP, and I am also certified ACP, Agile Certified Professional. So having said that, let's jump into the agenda. What are we going to do today is we're going to start by defining Agile. What is Agile project management from a high level? Core principles overall in the Agile, and then also we are going to cover the comparison between those two. We'll start by the introduction. Those questions, I hear them all the time whenever I do training. Some people ask me, can I use my Agile for my project? A lot of people ask me, is there a standard project management approach that works for all projects? When to use Agile, or is Agile project management applicable only for IT projects? What is the right approach? There's a huge confusion overall. What is the what is right is not necessarily what is right for me is not necessarily right for you. So this is a lot of people, especially when I do agile project management training, are very confused. They want to know, okay, great, this is very different from the traditional one. The question is when to use it, or should I use it and dump the traditional one that we all know, or it's becoming part of our DNA. So when to use either. So before we answer this question, maybe let me just highlight. I want to highlight the differences between them overall. Let's start with the traditional project management. We all know that traditional project management, normally we take the project, we need to plan it, and before we start planning, when we start planning it, we divide the project into phases. We call that project life cycle. So we cut or we dissect that project into 5 or 6 or 7 different phases. Each those phase, we usually have deliverables, and those deliverables we need to plan for them. And by the end of each phase we have here, we usually do a review. We call those reviews a lot of time gates or exit points or kill points. So we normally have what we call it a lot of time a classical life cycle. The traditional usually have the classical. Very good example for the classical is this one. So when I work, like we start by we cut the projects into the life cycle of the project will be having different phases, like 7. And this is the first example we have here: 7 phases: concept, analysis, design, construction, testing, delivery, and closeout. A standard in IT specific, it's very we normally or it's very common to use what they call it waterfall life cycle. Very similar to the traditional. It's cut to phases, and each phase is marked by gates. For example, the one that we usually see in the waterfall is requirement. You need to gather requirements. Then you do preliminary design. Then after that, when you get the acceptance for the preliminary design, we start doing the detailed design. After the design, we start coding and testing, and maybe after that, we are implementing. So again, in the traditional project management, we all know, especially the PPs, they know we always apply what they call it the 5 very famous process groups: the initiation, planning, execution, controlling, and closing. And it's very methodological. We go step by step. It's very streamlined, and that's what we normally see in the traditional project management. And Agile, it's totally different. It's not, I mean, the thing is, a lot of things that we say in traditional project management, we take it for granted, or with something that we accept it. We don't even think about it, becomes like instinct to us. Agile truly come here and challenge that concept. So we do not believe in a lot of upfront planning. We do not believe in having a detailed plan and WBS and critical path method and all the things that we normally do, and resource planning and budgeting for those resource planning and other things that we normally do under the traditional. The idea of agile project management, it's two things, two components. It has two components into it. It's iterative and it's incremental. So iterative means that we start sketching the idea of the project and we engage the owner, the client with us a lot in order to get his feedback, in order to make sure that we are conducting the right thing. And it's incremental, and the incremental is very important topic here for us under Agile, which means we could constantly, we deliver value to the owner or the client. We constantly give him something, give him a product that he can use. So instead, the major difference is in traditional project management, the client has to wait until the very end of the project before we start before he start to get value out of this project or get the product that he wants. In Agile, we don't do this. We keep giving the client value as we go. So we do not, the client doesn't have to wait until the very end of the project to start recognizing or realizing the value of the project or the product. We can give them a product like in the very early in the project life in Agile, and we keep enhancing and improving that product as we go. So the Agile project management is truly a value-driven approach. We are usually trying to deliver the most important, the high priority. So we ask the client, what exactly is the most important features you're looking for from the product? So he give you the most important features, and that's what we give him first. We always prioritize and reprioritize the features and the characteristics of the projects in order to make sure that we give them the highest priority first in order to satisfy him. A lot of time with research, especially in IT projects, it is proven that a lot of low value or low value features are truly the client doesn't end up using them at all. So do we really need to spend a lot of time and effort to develop those low priority features? Or should we spend our time in developing our more important and higher value features? So those are the questions that we usually overall address in Agile project management. So it's basically we deliver the work not in the normal or regular life cycle. Rather, we use chunks in order, or a small deliverables unit that we usually constantly delivering to the customer. Those normally in our language in Agile we call it features. So this is pretty much in a nutshell what are we talking about in Agile. Agile project management, deliver or focus, we have what we call it manifesto. In the manifesto, Agile project management manifesto, it has four major principles. We are focusing on delivering working software versus maybe documentation. We welcome change. That's a very important difference. In traditional project management, we resist change, we control it, but we do not like it. We try to reduce it or to minimize it, because we know any type of change in the project will can impact our bottom line. In Agile, we encourage it. That's a very different approach. We encourage changes, we welcome them, we tell the clients, please let us know if you change your mind. We will implement that. Another thing, major difference, and the third principle of Agile is the Agile recognize the fact that the team does the actual work, the team themselves, not the project manager necessarily, not the sponsor, not the client, the team. So the team has to be empowered. They need to be self organizing. They can decide themselves. They can plan themselves. They can divide the work among themselves. They can, basically have a better control of the situation and have much higher authority than what we normally see in the traditional project management. Another thing we see is simplicity. Agile is big. A lot of time it is so simple to the point that a lot of people wonder, is that can be done to manage a project? People sometimes are very confused about that. We really call for simplicity in the Agile. We do not like any complications. Even the tools we use, we do not, for example, use Microsoft Project or Primavera or anything like that. We normally shoot for like Flipboard. We use a lot of time post-it notes. Those are the things that we normally use in order to manage a project like an Agile. So, having said that, I'm going to give you a quick, Agile. Normally, there are many different schemes under Agile. One of the most popular schemes that we normally see is what we call Scrum lifecycle. Scrum lifecycle normally start with, we don't have maybe necessarily a scope statement that we drives all our activity. Instead, we replace it with what we call it product backlog. So our product backlog is our major document that we normally see, and we start the working from it. So from that product backlog, we usually do the agile projects. We do them through what they call them sprints or iterations, if you will. Depends on the methodology that we're using. If you're using Scrum, we use the word sprint. So sprint is only 1 to 4 weeks. So we small chunk. So instead of the plan that goes for months or years, we cut it into small, very small chunks. Maximum 4 weeks. Actually, the average that we normally see for each sprint is around 1 to 2 weeks. Not even we don't even get to the point it's 4 weeks. So we have what we call we derive sprint backlog from the product backlog. Is what are the exact tasks and features that we need to achieve in that particular sprint. And we do that in order to get the finished work. And we have other tools that can help us out. So this is basically the idea, the 10,000 feet maybe view of the Scrum or the Agile project management. Agile versus tradition versus Agile. I'm trying here to highlight the major differences between those two methodologies. I've seen one of those major differences in scope management, the second one in planning, third one in change control, fourth one in delivery, fifth in product owner involvement or the customer involvement, number 6 teamwork, and the last one is the project manager role. So let's explore those 7 differences quickly between those. So we'll start with the scope management. In traditional, we call for writing the scope statement. We describe normally the scope statement. It describes what's in, what's out. It's a detailed description of all the project work and deliverables, everything. Project scope statement is a detailed document that tells me exactly what I need to do. It's a very rigid approach. Scope statement can be really big document, and it's probably the most important document of the project overall life. And we derive all our functions and planning and activities to do in the project from this project scope statement, starting from the WBS all the way until we have task and work packages. In Agile, we don't have scope statement at all. Instead, we replace it with what we call it backlog. So backlog is about features. So we list all the features that the customer wants, and we prioritize them. from the most important to the least important. So what is the most important thing that we need to deliver for the customer, the feature, and then we list them by this. And this becomes our backbone. The project is, again, the product backlog is the most important document maybe in the Agile, but it's not scope statement. Very different. Scope is rigid, Agile is flexible and changing. The backlog is, I'm sorry, the backlog is Agile, is very flexible. It's prioritized. The scope statement is not prioritized, just full description of the project and the deliverables. So it's very different even from the look of it. So that's the list of all the deliverables that we need to do, the features, prioritized from the most important to the least important according to the value of the project. Another difference between the traditional and the agile, we all grow in thinking about what we call it triple constraints, if you guys remember, which is basically the scope, time, and cost, which is the scope in this case in IT specific, we call it features. This triple constraint is flipped in agile. In the traditional, normally the scope is we're trying to keep it as fixed as possible, while time and cost can be flexible and we can play with them. In agile, it's reverse. We're trying to fix the time and the cost, while the functionality can be variable in order to deliver for the customer what exactly is looking for. One of the most, I love this one, and that's why I keep sharing it. Probably that's not my first time I share this, but because truly it describes the beauty or the differences between the traditional and the agile project management. The agile, if I want to draw on the Mona Lisa, I guess, so I have the full description from the customer, what exactly is looking for, and I start doing it like as we go, until I finish it in stage number 5. In agile, it's not clear what the customer looking for. So I ask him, I get what he wants, and I start sketching. So I give it back to him. Is that what he wants? He said, no, not necessarily. Let's keep, for example, like number 2, the hands down. And then I do it again, give it to him. Is that what you want? He said, no, probably I want it to be colored. So, and it goes on until we finish the product. So that's really a nice way to look at the difference and the way we basically see the differences between those two. In the second one, if you see in Agile, the customer is much more involved than the first one. First one, the customer is normally involved in the very beginning of the project and the very end of the project, while in the Agile, he's constantly involved. Which takes us to the second difference between those two, Agile and traditional. Traditional, we believe in detailed upfront planning. We all, again, we all know about WBS, upfront planning, network diagram, critical path, Gantt chart, baselining, Microsoft project, Primavera, resource planning, budgeting. Those are very important terms for us who are involved in traditional project management. In Agile, we don't believe in upfront planning much. We do a little bit upfront planning, but we believe more in what we call it adaptive planning. Less upfront planning. We believe that we plan only for the coming sprint or sprints, maybe 1 or 2, and the rest is liquid, fluid. It's very, it can change. So we believe more in what we call it progressive elaboration. That we believe there is a point of what we call it enough planning. We believe that, and that's a big difference between traditional and agile, we believe that upfront planning is normally flawed, not accurate. That's a huge difference. That's a huge thing between those two. So why to waste a lot of time in the upfront planning? That doesn't mean we plan less. Actually, we plan more, but we do not do a lot of upfront planning. So in what we do in Agile, we plan for the coming sprint, that this planning is also constant, continuous. So whenever we finish 1 or 2 sprints, we plan again, and plan again, and plan again, and plan again. While we do not really necessarily rely much on the upfront to have like a well-defined plan was for a year or 2. So that's one of the huge differences between those two different approaches. Another big approach, a difference between those two methodologies is change. In change, as we said earlier, in traditional, we control change. We focusing or trying to deliver the scope as agreed upon. If the customer asks for any change, we have to go through change management process. We try to resist it, and the customer have to pay for it. And we have to reflect it. There is a specific, very rigid mechanism process in there in order to basically to implement any change. And if you don't do it properly, then the project can go out of control, and we have scope creep, and sometimes the project doomed to failure. And agile, we say no. We want that change. We welcome that change. We take that. We embrace it. We ask the customer to keep giving us feedback, and we keep implementing those feedback into and updating our backlog. So our backlog is not fixed by any means. Actually, very fluid. So whenever we recognize that the project or the owner or the client wants a new feature, we just add it, pre-prioritize and add it. And that's another major difference between those two different approaches. Delivery is another difference between them. The traditional, we usually have a structured approach, and we normally get the product or the service or whatever the end result of the project at the very end of the project. While in agile, we work and develop in small chunks. So basically, we deliver constantly. We deliver in the beginning the basic thing. A lot of times, those basic product we call it MVP, minimally viable product MVP, which is basically the very basic approach without anything. And then we keep adding to this approach until the owner or the client get the full picture. So the MVP is the bare minimum. It has to be work. This is the trick, guys. It has to be a workable, working product. So it's the product it's a very basic product that we deliver very soon, very early on in the project to the customer. But this product is working, should be working. The customer can be able to use it. It doesn't have all the bells and the whistles of the final product, but it is basic. It can be usable. So that usable product, we call it MVP. It's minimal viable product. As an example, we have a test, like a quick quiz for you guys. And in order to determine, so I want to ask you this one. So there's a survey. We'll start with this one, poll one. And in the poll one, you have this question. Which of the following can be considered to be MVP, minimally viable product? Remember, the minimally viable product is a product that we can use, but it doesn't have a lot of features, but it is usable. That's something you need to keep in mind. So the first answer would be a bicycle that has no handlebars. The second answer would be a pen that has a reservoir for glow in the dark as well as a regular ink. Third one, an order entry system that has no user interface. Or finally, the last question is a chair that has no back. Which one do you guys think it can be considered to be MVP? So I'll give you maybe 30 seconds, and then we have to move on. Okay, I got most of the answers. Is about a chair that has no back, and actually it is the right answer. So if you look at it, it is the right answer that the chair, we can use the chair, we can add that later on. Another question we have, and then another product owner, the client. Another difference is the product owner involvement. In the customer, again, the customer, in the traditional, the customer usually get involved very early on in the process and the very end of the project. we don't see them much throughout the execution of the project. But in the agile, customer involvement is key. It's constant, it's all the time. We have to engage in every single decision. He is the one who owns the product backlog. He is the owner of the product. So we cannot do anything without his approval. Another major difference between those two approaches. Teamwork, as we said earlier, we recognize the team to be as the agile. They are the people who are doing the actual work. They are the people who are basically we give them a lot of authority. They're self-managing, self-organization. We rely on them. We rely on what we call it a concept generalized specialist. So everybody in the team can be able to do any task. So we can divide those tasks together. And the nice thing about agile, it gives a lot of opportunity for each one of the teams to learn from each other. So it encourages involvement. So in the tradition, we normally see the status meeting. What normally we see in the agile is what we call a daily stand-up meeting. In the daily stand-up meeting, it's just a 15-minute meeting. We have them every day at the same exact time, just 10 or 15 minutes. And in those stand-up meeting, we ask the team members only 3 questions, no more, no less. What you have done since the last meeting, which most likely it's yesterday. What have you done since yesterday? What are you planning to do today or finish today? And the last question, do you have any problems? You don't have to solve the problems in the meeting. That's not the intent. It's more of communication meetings, so people are aware of what's going on. So once again, the questions that we do in the agile, in the stand-up meetings are those 3 only. What have you done since yesterday? What are you going to do today? And do you have any problems? If you need to elaborate in any one of those questions, you take it offline, not in the meeting. The meeting should not exceed 15 minutes by any means. And so that actually is something we usually do all the time. Another big difference in the differences between the traditional and the agile is in the traditional, the authority and the power of the project manager depends highly on the organizational structure, from functional to projectized, to know whether sometimes he have a lot of authority and a lot of power. In function, maybe it's less, but again, there is much more involvement of the project manager, and the project manager's ultimate responsibility of the project, especially in case of success or failure. In Agile, they introduced the concept of what they call it servant leadership. So we recognize once again, that the team members are the people who are doing the actual work. So your role as a project manager is to help them doing their job. So how to do this? By shielding them from any kind of interruption. So if somebody trying to interrupt their work, you try to protect them from them. You remove any problems or impediments from progress. You communicate what exactly the project, making sure that we are all on the same page. And the last thing, we call it a lot of time, carrying food and water, not literally, but means basically providing them with all kind of support. So the question remains, which one is better, traditional or agile? So this is the answer. Traditional project management is much better suited for well-defined large-size projects, especially in mature industries such as construction. So if you're in construction, you don't want to really switch to agile. That's not suitable. While in agile, the agile project management is much more popular in much more volatile, if you will, environment, or innovative, that constantly changing environment. Such a lot of time we call it knowledge-related sectors, which is very big in IT. Is it only IT? And the answer is no. We are seeing different industries start to engage in agile. We are seeing a lot of industries such as oil and gas, government, banking, manufacturing, supply chain, all those, they start exploring the possibility of it. They don't have to go agile all the way maybe, but at least they are going through at least some projects. They're doing it for smaller projects, or IT projects, or sometimes not really. I've seen also a lot of times implementing facility management projects, supply chain management projects, and other things like that. So it depends highly on many things, such as type of projects, size of projects, the complexity, the industry overall practice, and the organizational structure and the culture. I'm sorry, because a lot of time when we start introducing agile, there's going to be a lot of resistance in the beginning. Another thought here: can we customize? Yes, you can. You don't have. It's not by the end of the day. It's not sacred or biblical or holy texture. Yeah. So it's you can, of course, you can customize it. And a lot of companies, they started, they're not sure whether to go agile or not. We are seeing hybrid projects. So it has elements of traditional, but they start also to introduce some elements of agile. So that's what we normally see. The second, and that's the last one is another quiz. Is what can we learn in the stand-up meeting? So I'm going to give you 30 seconds to answer this one. So let's go ahead and answer it. Give you 30 seconds for that. So the first question will be, what can we learn from the stand-up meeting in Agile? How the work will be divided among the team? What obstacles are expected in the next iteration? The changes to the backlog since the last meeting, or what we hope to have by the next meeting. So what do you think the right answer is? And I'm getting mixed response between question 1, question 2, question 3, and question 4. And just give me a second. Let me give it more. Maybe everybody will get engaged. And the right answer is actually the last question, what we hope to have. Again, the 3 questions that we need to answer in the stand-up meeting are what have we done since the last meeting? What are we going to do next? And the last thing, what are the problems that we are facing? Which is, again, the last question in the right answer. So having said that, so that basically the end of our webinar. So I'm ready to go ahead and if there's any question, I'll be more than happy to answer. So I'm going to give you some time to. So please go ahead. There is a box, the chat box next to the right hand corner. If you have any question, please post it in there, and I'll be more than happy to answer the question. Go ahead. Can you have a copy of the presentation? Yes, actually, it will be emailed. Yeah, it will be emailed to you guys. So I think all your information is all the email address with us. So basically, this is will go to you guys. Thank you very much, everyone. I'm gonna give it another maybe somebody's typing. So let's see if there's. You are welcome, everyone. You are welcome, everyone. So apparently, it's. I think that's about it. So, anyways, if you when you receive the material and you have any questions, you can always email me. You have my email address. Thank you very much for attending this webinar, and I hope everyone to have a pleasant evening, and hopefully we'll see you again in my next webinar. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.
agile.com.